When I was young, I was told to go to school and eventually I would get a career and get married and have kids. Even though I knew from a young age that I didn't want to do half of that. My parents were like, you don't get it now, but you will when you get older because you're going to want to be like all your friends and do all the things that they're doing and keep up with the Joneses, because there were a couple of narcissists and they really had to be competing with everybody around them. And I didn't. I never did. I never have. I never will. I do my own thing. And so it didn't fit with me the whole time. But when I was young, we were given the impression that there is a path. Right? There's a path and everybody goes through that path. You go to school, you get a job, you get a better job, you get a house, do all the things, right? And a variety of things happen along the way, including new technologies being developed and the fight for being authentic. There were so many of us that were born into this lifetime needing to be artists, and there was a lot of pushback from our parents, from the system, from whomever, telling us that that was not feasible and it was crazy. You're crazy. I think a lot of us measure our personal success by comparing ourselves to other people and to what we've been told we're supposed to have achieved by a certain age, right? By a certain age, you're supposed to have graduated school, gotten a job. By a certain age, you should have bought a house, got married, had kids. But in our lifetime, as we would get closer and closer to these landmark ages, we realized that was not going to happen for a lot of us. And for those who did achieve a lot of those things, they did it by getting help. Even though most of us are told that we should be able to do it on our own and we just have to pull up our socks. Most of the people that I know of that have accomplished any of those things on the list, bought a house, had kids, all those things, have and still are getting help from their parents or other family members or whomever. Someone like myself and many of you watching don't have that. And because I grew up in a narcissistic family, if I ever was offered help, there was always strings attached and I was shamed for it afterwards. So while cost of living has skyrocketed, pay, like the average pay that people receive from their work, from their labor, has barely gone up. It is not correlated to the inflation rate. So there's a massive discrepancy making the cost of living unbearable for a lot of us. And it's getting progressively worse. We're in 2026, we're in the fourth turning. And if you don't know what that means, there's every 20 years is a new turning. It's you have to read the book to understand what I'm talking about, but there is a theory that every 20 years there is a new generational turning that plays a role. And there's 4 turnings, where the first one is an economic boom, the fourth one is an economic collapse and also has war involved and that kind of thing. And we're in the fourth turning right now. We're having an economic collapse. We have war, but that does eventually end and we end up in another first turning, which is an economic boom. But getting there is very difficult, it's very painful. I believe that we're in the last few years of the fourth turning. We're entering into the first turning. I don't know exactly when it's going to start, but probably something like 2030. If the fourth turning started in 2008 or around 2008, then we might hit it in like 2028, right? The first turning. So things do get better, but in the meantime, things really, really suck, okay? And so when you're comparing your current situation to what the standard is, what you're doing is you're comparing yourself to markers that are impossible for our generation to hit, okay? Almost impossible, especially not alone, okay? It's unreasonable to expect us to pull up our socks and go buy a house. That's just not mathematically possible. And anyone who's going to gaslight you into believing that you're the problem because you're just not trying hard enough, truly doesn't know what they're talking about. The other things that are influencing us to continue to feel ashamed of where we are is the fact that a lot of our peers are lying about how well they're doing because they too are trying to compete with the standard or where they think their peers are. So a lot of people are saying they're fine when they're not, you know. A lot of people are saying that everything's covered when they're actually getting into deeper and deeper debt. A lot of people pretend that they have everything together when they're really just getting help. So we're comparing ourselves to age markers that don't apply to our generation. We are comparing ourselves to the accomplishments of a generation that accomplished things in a completely different economy. We're comparing ourselves to our peers who are minimizing how bad they're doing or exaggerating how well they're doing. And then there's influencers who are largely lying a lot of the time, and I'm going to get into that in a second. And the media pretending that everything's fine, and the GDP that's a lie because the GDP is actually being inflated by AI and data centers and stuff like that. I had mentioned in a previous video, probably the second to last video that I did last year, that a few years ago I started contacting sponsors. I made a media kit. I started contacting sponsors because I was trying to get my channel to a place where I could live off of it. And I was not getting any responses. And the emails that I was getting from sponsors were all basically trying to rip me off in one way or another. And I thought that it was because of my niche or something I was doing, or my content wasn't good enough, or I wasn't posting regularly enough. But here's what I've come to learn, and I've learned this because there are influencers now talking about it openly. That at that point in time where I was having trouble getting sponsors, they were also having trouble getting sponsors. And sponsorship for influencers has been on the decline ever since. And a lot of these influencers were trying to keep up the image that they had curated, that they had built their platform on, about being rich and living luxurious lives of indulgence. And they were going deeper and deeper into debt, thinking that it would be fine because eventually they would get a sponsor to pay for stuff or whatever, right? And it would just even out. But that didn't happen. So social media is lying, your peers are lying, the media is lying about the state of the economy, and a whole lot of people are ending up in more deeper and deeper financial debt and destitution. A lot of people are becoming homeless. Resources are tapped out. This is a big problem. So if you are in one of those situations where you are in deep debt, not in a place in your life where you thought you would be at your age, financially destitute or becoming homeless or any of those things, you are far from alone. And it's not because you're a failure. It's because of the economy. It's because we're at the end of the fourth turning. And it's because the old world, the old way, the old system is crashing. It is falling, crumbling. It's being destroyed. It's being burnt to the ground so that we can build something better on the ashes. So much corruption, so much of the lies has come to the surface over the past couple years and is going to continue to do so, to the point where we are all collectively recognizing that the world we've been living in is a lie. Especially in the Western world, in North America, we have been, obviously not in recent years, but previous to that, we've been living in comfortable denial about the horrific repercussions of the system we were living in. The lavish luxury, the ease that we live in was due to the fact it was built on child slave labor. It was built on slave labor and the exploitation of people in other countries, on war and genocide. I might have to bleep some of these words. On theft and fraud and corruption and trafficking. The world that we lived in, where we were so comfortable, was built on extreme harm. And we have to face that, and we have to change that. And it's going to be changed whether you personally care or like it or not. The old way is being torn down. It's being burnt to the ground. And we are rebuilding something based in community, in interdependence, in recognizing that everyone has to be okay. Everyone has to have their needs taken care of. That's not just in our countries and our own homeless community, but we're talking about globally. We can no longer turn a blind eye to the people living on the street in our own backyards, and we can no longer turn a blind eye to the people who are suffering in other countries because of the dollar exchange or whatever else. So again, if you feel like you are not in a place in life where you want to be, and you feel like you're stuck, you're not alone. The current situation of the world is going to be over soon. It's going to change, and things are going to get better. You're not behind your peers. Your peers are mostly also struggling and keeping their head above water. This is an era of redemption and correction. It's happening whether you like it or not.